And welcome back to the NFLandU podcast. I'm your host, as always, Hayden Vassar, coming to you on Monday, January 13th. We've made it to the Final Four. Yeah. Very surprising looking Final Four, by the way. I'm willing to bet nobody saw this specific four-team lineup still standing right before championship weekend. We're in the home stretch now, people. With divisional round weekend now in the rearview mirror, it's now full steam ahead to Championship Sunday, like I just mentioned. Now, I will give it to you. This divisional round wasn't as fun and exhilarating as Wildcard Weekend was. There were still a lot of fun moments this weekend, but it wasn't as wire-to-wire fun as Wildcard Weekend. It was kind of a grab bag. Some good here, some good there. But it still gave us more than plenty to talk about, and that's what we're going to get into today. We'll recap all four games that happened over Saturday and Sunday, what they meant, their fallout, all this, that, and therefore, and give you the full championship Sunday slate at the end of the show. But first, we got a bit of news to get to. So let's kick it off with news, shall we? The last head coaching vacancy in the league has been filled less than 24 hours after his team's loss in the divisional round on Saturday afternoon. The Browns announced that their new head coach will be Vikings offensive coordinator Kevin Stefanski. Stefanski has been an offensive coordinator for Minneapolis since 2017 when he was promoted from the quarterback coach position, which he had held for a couple of years before then, but he had been on the staff since Brad Childress was there, if you can believe that. So he's been there for a very long time on the Vikings offensive staff. So, like I just said, he was a quarterback coach, and then he became the offensive coordinator for Minnesota. That should have Cleveland fans excited, in my opinion. This guy is an offensive-minded guy, which is a plus right there, and he has a background of working with quarterbacks, which is another massive plus, which means hopefully he can continue to develop Baker Mayfield, and that should be the priority and main goal of the Browns moving forward. Try to stabilize things, but really try to develop Baker. We don't want him joining that long list of Cleveland quarterbacks that have gone bust. He's got talent. He's got potential. Develop the young man. So here's the funny thing about Stefanski, though. Stefanski, if you believe the reports that surrounded the Browns a year ago, was very much in the running for the Cleveland Browns job then. In fact, apparently he was the runner-up last time around. The organization had apparently done its due diligence, decided that they wanted to hire Stefanski, but I don't exactly remember who. It might have been the owners. It might have been GM John Dorsey at the time. Somebody higher up in that organization said, we're not going to hire Stefanski. We're going to keep Freddie Kitchens and be our head coach. Now you fast forward a year later, now Freddie Kitchens has been fired and Stefanski is being hired on as the head coach now. So Cleveland eventually got the guy they wanted a year ago. It just took a very roundabout way to get there. The Browns have offensive talent, like I just mentioned. They got Baker, who I still believe can play at a solid level. I saw enough in his rookie year to believe that. Nick Chubb should have been the NFL rushing champion this year. If he had at least shown up and had like an 80-yard game in his last game, he would have been the rushing champion. And they have Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. if those two decide to stay. And a myriad of other offensive players. So Stefanski has something to work with. Now, I know the Vikings' last offensive performance that we saw this season, that we're going to get into here in a minute, was not good. And it's going to leave a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. I like Stefanski. I think he's a solid offensive coordinator, and he has potential to be a solid head coach. He's going to have to develop and grow, though. So, I'm just trying to get to the point. I like this hire. In fact, I like it so much that if we wanted to do a quick update of the power ranking of head coaching hires, the Cleveland Browns, now that there's 5 teams that have their head coaches, Cleveland Browns come in 4th. They're not last. They come in 4th. I like this hire more than I like the Joe Judge hire. So I'm just trying to say, I think the Browns got a solid head coach, even though he's just an offensive coordinator. He hasn't been a head coach. But it doesn't matter who they hire. That needs to be said for first and foremost. It does not matter who in the blue hell they hire. What matters is, for the love of all that is holy, the Haslams, the owners of the Cleveland Browns, please stay out of the way. please just let this man work. It is not that complicated. It is not as hard as you seem to make it out to be. Just let the man work and things should be okay. Because if you don't, you're probably firing him in a year and a half. And we don't want to keep doing this every single year, Cleveland. It gets old fast. So once again, Cleveland Browns hire Kevin Stefanski to be their new head coach. And now all the head coaching vacancies are filled. So yay! We went through the coaching carousel. Rather drama-filled free, surprisingly enough. So, that's all I got for news. So without further ado, let's get into recap, shall we? And let's start with the game that has people talking a bit this morning about how it ended. Seattle at Green Bay. Green Bay holds on to win it late, 28-23. Seattle tried to rally late, didn't they? If you watch this game late Sunday night. But it was too little too late as their defense just couldn't get a stop when its team needed it the most. And that's what we're going to talk about here in a second when we get to it. Packers came out of the gate firing on all cylinders. Now, it wasn't explosive as some of the other offenses that we saw over the weekend, like the 49ers or the Chiefs, for example, but it was still pretty dang good compared to what they have been doing. They jumped out to an early 21-3 lead going into halftime. Rodgers is doing work. The Seahawks have no answer for Devontae Adams, who had a record-setting night. And they just couldn't get off the field. The Seahawks defense had no answers for anybody. They were just struggling with the simplest things. The Packers were dominating in every single statistical category, to be brutally honest. And the Seahawks couldn't get anything going on offense at all. It looked like the Seahawks season was teetering on the brink of collapse. Now, I know we'd sat through multiple playoff games this year with teams coming back, but this one just felt different at halftime. This one felt like the Seahawks are outmanned, they're outgunned, and this thing is just about to spiral down even worse in the second half. Thankfully for Seahawks, they got a quick score early in the third quarter to bring it to 21-10, so they're only down 11. But then the Packers march downfield and score again about halfway through the third quarter. Now it's 28-10. They're down 18 points with a quarter and a half left. And you're thinking, well, Seahawks offense really hasn't done anything. The writing's almost starting to appear on the wall for the Seahawks team. Like I said, they got about a quarter and a half left, down 18 points. It's becoming over very fast for the Seahawks. Until Russell Wilson started to turn the tide, damn near on his own. Like we talked about on Friday, the Seahawks game plan should be this: let Russell Wilson cook and get out of his way. And what he did in that final quarter and a half was cook. That man was putting that entire franchise on his back single-handedly. With his running ability, that was the main thing I noticed. I know the numbers aren't eye-popping or anything like that when you look at it, but it just felt like every time he could take off, he did. And he was turning up some yards, getting some key first downs on the ground. And then with his arms, finding Travis Homer, Tyler Lockett, keeping the chains moving. It was truly special to watch him just go downfield and just try to keep this team afloat. He was bringing the Seahawks back from the dead, much like their entire season. They're beat up, banged up, broken and bruised, but they're still fighting. It was truly incredible to watch him do this. Wilson, he truly did bring them back from the dead. He rallied the Seahawks all the way back, got them within 5 points. So it's 28-23. He scored 13 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to pull within 5 with minutes left. He just needs to. It was after Wilson took a sack on third down, so the Seahawks punted away. There's a little over 2 minutes left. He just needs his defense to get a stop for him and give him the ball back for a chance. Just a chance at something, anything, potentially anything to give the Seahawks hope. But that chance never came. Because much like they had all night, the Seahawks struggled to stop Green Bay on third down. In fact, they allowed Green Bay to convert 9 out of 14 third downs the entire night. That's pretty solid work in that department. And picked up they picked up 2 crucial third downs on that final drive to bleed out the clock for Green Bay after some truly great throws by Aaron Rodgers. I mean, those were arguably two of his better throws this entire season. That's how pretty they were. Green Bay picks up the third downs, they bleed out the clock, and they win the game. And when Seattle needed its defense the most this entire season, it just wasn't there, and it let the team down. Now, I mentioned off the top that there was a bit of controversy at the end of this game. If you were watching and you saw that final third down conversion, wasn't it to Jimmy Graham, if I remember correctly? Jimmy Graham gets hit, he falls, and the refs say he got the first down. I'm sitting there watching it thinking, that's not a first down. It looked like he was down well before it, and they go to review, and they say he got the first down. And I'm sitting there watching every angle, I'm saying, it looked like he was down well before then. Like he was down by contact, so it would have been fourth down. But the refs say differently. They say he got the first, which allowed Green Bay to bleed out the rest of the clock and win the game. And if you're on football Twitter, which I'm a native member of football Twitter, it's just a bunch of people acting like it's the freaking Zapruder film, drawing lines across the screen saying, look, this is where the ball is right when he touches the ground, all this, that, and therefore. It's a very interesting conversation to be had, but I think Seattle, it shouldn't have to come down to, did the ball cross a 1-inch yard on a third down play with like 30 seconds left? If Seattle had made one or two third down stops earlier in the game, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The Seahawks might have won. But since they couldn't stop them all night, it was just another instance of the Seahawks defense not coming up in a big moment. And that's what's held them back all season long. I mean, Russell Wilson once again played magically. He gave his team ample opportunity. But the days of Seattle winning on the backbone of their defense, they're long gone. The defense is a liability now, and they couldn't get the job done when it mattered most. For the Packers, that run game and defense really helped the Packers out. I mean, Russell Wilson got sacked 5 times. It felt like he was getting hit a lot more than that, to be honest with you. Even if the stats don't show it. I mean, Aaron Jones, didn't he have 2 touchdowns in this game? He had a pretty solid night, too. It was just a total team effort. And like I said, nothing this Packers team does knocks your socks off. Honestly, it was mainly that last drive by the Packers was the most impressive thing from that game for me, from them. Everything else they did, I was like, okay, yeah, that's solid, that's solid. Nothing they did really was like, wow, that's pretty good. You know what I'm saying? If that makes any sense at all. But they got a run game. They got somewhat semblance of a defense. The defense did hold Russell Wilson in check for the vast majority of the game, in my opinion. You know, like I said, they held him down for like 2.5 quarters. They only allowed 10 points for the vast majority of the game until Russell started going off. That's constant. That's pretty good in my opinion. Now, if that run game that can bleed out the clock late in the game and that defense can click for a majority of a game, that's a deadly combo, and it could potentially give the Packers an NFC championship, and that's where they're heading. For the Packers, it wasn't perfect. Like I just said, it wasn't. But it was a win. And at this point, it doesn't need to be perfect, and it don't need to be pretty. It just needs to be a win. By hook or by crook at this point, am I right? And their reward is a trip to the NFC Championship game to go avenge a loss that came earlier in the season. For the Seahawks, for the love of all that is holy, get this man Russell some help. He needs some help. This is ridiculous. I'm tired of watching this man do it all on his own. Give him some help. And I know that there were injuries that tore apart this team. Get him some defensive help. Get him some offensive help. Get him some help. This is ridiculous. Sweet Jesus. I'll get you some final stat lines here real quick. Aaron Rodgers went 16 of 27 for 243 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 sacks. Solid night. Like I mentioned, Davante Adams had a really good night. 8 catches, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns. The 160 yards, most by any Packers player in postseason history. So, he set a record. Good for Davante Adams. Russell Wilson went 21 of 31 for 277 yards, 1 touchdown, got sacked 5 times, though. Felt like he was getting hit a lot more than that, though. He rushed for like 50-something yards. He was the Seahawks' leading rusher for like the 3rd week in a row. Like I said, get this man some help. And Tyler Lockett had a solid night, 9 catches, 136 yards, 1 touchdown. Just get this man some help. It's not that hard. So Packers win in the divisional round. They're moving on to the NFC Championship game. Let's talk about their opponent. In this next recap, Minnesota at San Francisco. San Francisco wins 27-10 in the first game on Saturday. The magical carpet ride for the Vikings crashes and burns in Levi's Stadium as the 49ers defense swarms the entire Vikings offense and turns them into nothing. Despite that gloomy outlook I just gave, the first half gave the Vikings fans at least some kind of semblance of hope. It was close, only a 4-point game going into halftime. The 49ers had made mistakes, that Jimmy Garoppolo interception right before halftime, for example. Sure, the Vikings offense wasn't performing well, but they had to like their chances. It was a close game on the road against a 49ers defense that wasn't exactly, a 49ers team as a whole that wasn't exactly clicking yet. Then in the second half, the bottom fell out for the Vikings as they were held scoreless the entire second half and the 49ers blew things open. People were somewhat concerned about the Niners defense coming into this one, weren't they? You heard the whispers that, at the first half of the season they were really good, but in the second half they got exposed. Look at all these points per game. On average, they were giving up, yada, yada, yada. That was my best impression of talking head people. Whispers maybe that they had lost a step. I think this performance quieted those concerns for at least a brief moment. They only allowed 147 total yards in this game, only 10 points, got 2 turnovers and 6 sacks. That's a damn good performance no matter how you slice it. That's defensive domination. And major kudos to the 49ers for shutting down Dalvin Cook. We talked about it on Friday that their rush defense wasn't the best in the league. It was literally at the halfway point. They were 16th in the entire NFL at the end of the regular season. But they made Dalvin Cook and the rest of that running game a non-factor. You wouldn't be able to tell that rush defense wasn't their strong suit if you had just watched this game. They allowed only 21 total rush yards the entire game. That's pretty dang good. For the Vikings offense, they just couldn't get anything going. Like at all. With Cook taken out of the equation and made into nothing, it all fell on the rest of that Vikings offense to get things going. And to be brutally honest, they just couldn't deliver. As the Vikings racked up only 7 first downs the entire game. 7 first downs. They were getting close to setting a record for the fewest first downs in a playoff game in NFL history. They got like 2 or 3 in the final quarter to avoid that, but that's how bad it was for them. You know how bad that was? They had 7 first downs the entire game. The Packers converted more third downs in their entire game than the Vikings had first downs. That's sad. That's real sad. And then you compare it to how many first downs the 49ers had. The 49ers had 21 first downs. 3 times as many. That's not good. Conversely, the 49ers offense, you come in expecting, it's going to be something tricky. Kyle Shanahan's going to draw up something fancy. It really wasn't fancy. It was just straight up the middle running. They ran the ball like a total of 41 times. That was their offensive game plan. They had a touchdown drive in the third quarter that was all runs. And the Vikings had no answer for it and got a touchdown from it. It was just domination by the 49ers. It was spearheaded by Tevin Coleman, the running back. 22 rushes, 105 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. As Kyle Shanahan continues to show how gifted of a play caller he is, they racked up 186 total rush yards, and they dominated time of possession too. 38 minutes and 27 seconds to 21 minutes and 33 seconds. They nearly doubled the Vikings' time of possession. Isn't that crazy? Let me get you some stat lines real quick. Jimmy Garoppolo, 11 of 19, 139 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 2 sacks. He wasn't asked to throw the ball much. Like I said, they ran the ball 41 times, showing that they can win in a variety of ways. And then Kirk Cousins, 21 of 29, 172 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 6 sacks. I mean, oh my God. It felt like he was getting a hit a lot more than that. He was under constant pressure. And the Vikings, they had that one deep play to Stephon Diggs in the first half for a touchdown. And after that, it just felt like their offense just dried up and just shriveled up completely. They just had no answers. This game has a lot of fallout, as the Vikings will go into this offseason with a ton of questions about their offense, especially now that Stefanski, their offensive coordinator, is the head coach of the Browns. I mean, what is the Vikings offense going to look like next year? Should be a big concern for that team. As for the 49ers, though, their defense was solid, like we talked about, and their offense needs to be better, through the passing game. It was a little bit sloppy. They had 2 turnovers in this one. As that continues to haunt that team, it's a bit of a problem. But I think they can clean it up and be prepared for next week, as a rematch with the Packers in San Francisco looms next weekend for the NFC Championship game. And I think it's the worst case scenario for the Packers, because if the San Francisco defense is back on track, that should scare them, because that defense held Aaron Rodgers to one of his worst games his entire career. So it'll be interesting to watch how the Packers prepare for him this time around. But once again, 49ers win a dominating defensive matchup, 27-10, and are moving on to the NFC Championship. So that was the NFC. Let's go back to Sunday and talk about the AFC. Kansas City at Houston. I have no words for what we witnessed in this game. I have no words for the complete insanity and pure debauchery that we experienced over the course of 3.5 hours on a Sunday afternoon. It was mind-boggling, and we're going to talk about it. So here comes Houston, the Texans, a soft little dome team, champion of the AFC South, going to Kansas City in the freezing cold to take on a team coming fresh off a bye week. And it looked over before it even started, didn't it? Kansas City came out of the gate dropping passes, muffing punts. They allowed a block punt return for a touchdown. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong for the Chiefs in that first quarter. And it all led up to the Houston Texans taking a 24-0 lead in the freaking first quarter. And you're thinking, oh, good God, the Texans are going to go to the AFC Championship game. It's going to be an all AFC South championship game. Like I said, everything that could go wrong did go wrong for the Chiefs. They just came out as flat as humanly possible, as people fired up their takes about why playoff bye weeks are bad and they're poisonous. And it was stunning to watch. But it was, in the first quarter, so there was still a lot of football left to be played. And Houston found that out the hard way. People on Twitter were quick to point out that when Houston took the 24-0 lead, it came off of they didn't go for it on a 4th and 1 deep in Kansas City territory, and they decided to kick the field goal. They were like, that's when the momentum shifted. Which I guess it's a fair point to say, but I would argue that the momentum shifted in a different way. That after they go up 24-0 after the field goal, Mahomes gets the ball back, goes downfield, they score a quick touchdown, then the Texans get the ball back. All right? It's 24-7, still early in the second quarter. Then the Texans, they're driving a bit, they get just outside of midfield. It's like 4th and 4, they're going to punt it, but then they decide, hey, let's run a fake punt. Why not? They get stopped, turn the ball over in their own territory, sets up a quick Chiefs touchdown. That's, in my opinion, when the momentum changed. That's when it all swung heavily in favor of the Chiefs. That quick little moment where, hey, Chiefs were down 24-7. Now they're only down 24-14, and it's only been 3 minutes. But the Chiefs didn't stop there. Combine all of those scores together in the second quarter, they scored 28 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. 28. To take a 4-point lead going into halftime. Houston didn't just blow a lead over the course of a game. Houston blew the lead in the second freaking quarter. Oh my, I had never seen anything like that. It was stunning. It was just Mahomes just drawing plays up to Travis Kelce, who the Texans couldn't stop. Then it was, hey, here's a little razzle-dazzle little running back. Here's Mahomes running outside for 20 yards. The Texans had no answers for what the Chiefs were doing. So they go into halftime up 28-24, and you're thinking, oh, good golly gosh, we're going to get a fun game in the second half, aren't we? The Chiefs didn't let up in the second half as they would outscore the Texans 23-7 in the second half. To not just complete the comeback, but blow out their opponent at the same time as Kansas City wins the game 53-31. I held off giving you the final score to really enunciate the impact of what the heck this was. To not just complete the comeback, but blow out their opponents at the same time. For those keeping score, if you are not good at math like me, after the Texans went up 24-0, after that moment, the Chiefs outscored the Texans 51-7 the rest of the game. Just an absolute embarrassment. Oh my gosh. Like I said, the Texans defense, they had no answer for Mahomes or Kelsey, who did the vast majority of the damage for their teams. Let me give you some stat lines for them. You ready for this? Mahomes, 23 of 35, 321 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's his entire stat line. Travis Kelsey, 10 catches, 134 yards, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, that just doesn't seem fair, does it? Like I said, they had no answer to stop Mahomes or Kelsey, who did the vast majority of the damage, as they just repeatedly carved up the Texans defense. Once again, after going up 24-0, here are the Chiefs' drive results for the rest of the game. You ready? These are the drive results after going down 24-0. Touchdown, 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 touchdown. Am I counting that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 touchdown drives, then a field goal, then a punt, and then the end of the game. They had 10 drives the rest of the game after going down 24-0. 8 of them resulted in points. That's just domination. There is no getting around it. As the Chiefs put up the most points in a postseason game in franchise history. That's just absurd. It's mind-boggling what they did in this game. Just an absolute collapse by the Texans after the first Chiefs touchdown, like we talked about how the momentum swung. And then after the Chiefs scored the touchdown after that fake punt, then the Texans get the kickoff and fumble the kickoff on a hard hit. And the Chiefs recover and score after they recover that ball. It's just everything that could go wrong did go wrong for the Chiefs in the first quarter. Then the rest of the game, everything that could possibly go wrong did go wrong for the Texans. And then you multiply that by 10 and that's what you got. It was just absurd what happened in this game. And I really feel bad for Deshaun Watson, who became the first quarterback in NFL history to throw for, over 300 passing yards and score 3 touchdowns in a game with no interceptions and then lose the game. That's just absurd. You put up that stat line and that quarterback should win almost every week. Deshaun Watson went 31 of 52 for 388 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 sacks on the game. He also rushed 6 times for 37 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. So that's how you get 3 total touchdowns. It was just absurd. It made no sense. For the Texans, I don't know what Texans fans are feeling right now. It can't be depression. It must. This is one of the most insane comebacks we've seen in a postseason game ever. They'll be talking about this when they are enshrining Patrick Mahomes into the Hall of Fame. That's how insane this was. And it made 0 sense. For the Texans, you had a 24-0 lead. And I'm going to go back to a sentiment that I have held ever since we started the show. If you're blowing a double-digit lead in any game at any point, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. It's that simple. I don't care who you're playing. I don't care who their quarterback or head coach is. You can't go up 24-0 and then lose that game. That's inexcusable for any head coach or quarterback or defense. You can't lose those games, man. I said it to the Bills when they blew a double-digit lead last week, And now I'm saying it to you, Houston. You blew a double-digit lead. You don't deserve to be in the playoffs. Simple. End of story. For the Chiefs and Mahomes, they deserve an insane amount of credit for this game. I know Lamar is going to win MVP. We're going to talk about Lamar here in a second. But this performance reinforces the opinion that Mahomes is the best quarterback in the entire league. He is literally the only guy in the league I would feel comfortable with if my team was down 24-0. Because he just has that kind of magnetic leadership personality trait that lets you believe no matter how bad it seems, he's going to bring you back. It's an insane quality that very few quarterbacks in the history of the league have possessed, and Mahomes seems to be the current one possessing it now. And that should bode extremely well for the Chiefs, who now have a great chance to go to the Super Bowl for the first time in decades. Oh gosh, what, like the 70s was the last time they went? They have a pretty good shot at ringing it in this year. So, Chiefs win the game, come all the way back from down 20-plus points to win by 20 points. It just doesn't make sense. And the Chiefs' reward, they get to host the AFC Championship game next weekend because of the result of this last game we're going to talk about. Tennessee at Baltimore. Oh boy, Tennessee at Baltimore. Tennessee wins this game 28-12. I truly never thought we'd be talking about this. The magical run for the Titans continues as they slay one more juggernaut in the AFC en route to a historically stunning upset in Baltimore. Here's how the Titans won this game. You ready? The Titans did something that no other team has been able to do to the Ravens all season long. They forced them to play from behind. And I know that sounds simple when you say it, but that little thing threw the entire Ravens off. Thanks to some early Ravens miscues, you had a Lamar interception that got tipped off the receiver's hands. The Ravens went for it on a fourth down and didn't get it. They resulted in 2 touchdowns for the Titans immediately off that turnover on downs and then the interception. So suddenly the Titans are up 14-0 early in the second quarter, and the entire city of Baltimore is shell-shocked. They were not expecting anything like this. The Ravens were able to kick 2 field goals right before halftime to make it an 8-point game, so it's a 1-score game at halftime, 14-6, to make things interesting. And you're thinking, all right, Ravens are going to kick it into high gear in the second half, or we're going to have an interesting second half and come down to the wire. Then in the third quarter, the Titans just blew it open. After once again coming up short on fourth down, it was a theme all night for the Ravens. They just could not convert on fourth down. The Titans rode Derrick Henry downfield on a 66-yard run. They get to the goal line, and then Derrick Henry throws a pass for a touchdown. Oh my goodness. It was incredible. It was like a little Tim Tebow jump pass from the University of Florida. It was beautiful. And I was sitting there stunned. I'm like, okay, it's only 21-6. I mean, the Ravens still have plenty of time to do it. And it just goes to show that maybe Derrick Henry is like the best running back in the league right now. He's just doing it all. But it wasn't over then. As the Ravens get the ball back and then proceed to fumble the ball and the Titans recover it. And they turn that quickly into a Ryan Tannehill rushing touchdown. A 14-point swing at the drop of a hat, and now it's 28-6. And that was the first moment I thought, oh my gosh, the Titans could actually win this game. Oh my gosh. The Ravens didn't give up. They fought to the bitter end, but it was just too much to overcome as the Titans hang on to pull off this massive upset on the road. Like I said, they forced the Ravens to play from behind. The Ravens lost because of that, and the Titans forced them out of their rhythm, forcing them to play from behind. It's something that they haven't done all year, so they really weren't used to it. And the Ravens panicked, and they opted to ditch their game plan that had worked the entire season to go for something new because they were down by double digits in the second quarter. You want some evidence of this? Lamar Jackson threw 59 passes in this game. 59. That is most definitely not part of their game plan. Well, what's the most passes Lamar's thrown in a game this year? What? Like 28? I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. I'm just saying they run the ball a heck of a lot, and they just ditched it because they were down 14 points. I think if they had just stuck with their game plan, they would have found a way to win. But an even bigger, I can't enunciate, an even bigger factor to why the Ravens couldn't get anything going is what happened on fourth down. The Ravens had been arguably the best fourth down offense in the entire league this season because they just kept going for it. It's how they would sustain these long 10-minute drives that you saw multiple times this season. It's how they beat the Patriots and other teams throughout the course of the season. In this game, it was their undoing. As they went 0 for 4 on fourth down, you combine that with the 3 turnovers from an offense that hasn't turned it over much this year, it all culminated. It was a perfect storm for arguably the most unlucky day for the Ravens they've had all season long. It was just a catastrophe. The Titans, speaking to the Titans real quick, I want to praise their defense because they deserve a lot of credit. I said it was one of the worst defenses in the playoffs coming in. And the last 2 weeks, they've been a stonewall. They held the best offense in the league this past Saturday night to 12 points and 0 for 4 on fourth down. That's a massive win any way you look at it. I don't care who you are. Now, speaking of the Titans offense real quick, it's simple. Just ride Derrick Henry. As he posted another 180-yard rushing day, they're comparing his numbers to Earl Campbell, the great Houston Oilers running back from, what was it, the 80s, 70s? I'm really off my game this morning. That's how dominant Derrick Henry's current postseason run is. That the only person you can compare him to is Earl Campbell? That's insane when you think about it. And while the numbers don't exactly say it, Ryan Tannehill was pretty helpful too, as he had 3 total touchdowns in this game, 1 rushing, 2 passing. It was just enough to advance the Titans past the Ravens. This is a massive win for this team, no matter how you look at it. And the days of people joking about the Titans are over. Let me get you some stat lines real quick. Derrick Henry, 30 rush attempts for 195 yards. He also threw 1 pass, completed it for 3 yards, and 1 passing touchdown. Isn't that great? Ryan Tannehill, 7 of 14 for 88 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, got sacked once, 6 rushes for 13 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. 2 straight games, Ryan Tannehill has gone without going over 100 receiving yards. 100 passing yards. And it was evident in both those games that the Titans were the better team on the field. That's crazy. Lamar Jackson, 31 of 59 in passing, 365 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks. He also rushed 20 times for 143 yards. I mean, Lamar put up close to 500 total yards at the end of this game. Lamar was not the reason the Ravens lost. I think they lost because they panicked, they got out of their rhythm, and they just weren't prepared. They hadn't played from behind this entire season. In fact, there was an interesting stat after the game that Lamar Jackson in his career is now 0 for 3 in games where the Ravens trail by 8 points at halftime. I don't think that's a take on Lamar Jackson. I think that's just a take on the Ravens' entire team, that if you throw them off their rhythm and you force them to come from behind, they panic because they're not used to it. It was kind of similar to how their last playoff game against the Chargers went. I feel genuinely bad for Lamar, though. This man just put up an all-time great season that they're going to talk about for years to come. He's going to win the MVP award, and it ends like this. That sucks. It really does. And now he has to go into an entire offseason and stew on it for months. And we've heard about it since this past offseason, how much that Chargers wild card loss last year bothered Lamar, and it stuck with him, and it hung over him. And now he's got to go do it again. That really sucks, and I feel bad for him. I really do. This wasn't just another number one seed going one and done in the playoffs. This was a historic letdown by the Ravens, as the Ravens become only the second team in NFL history to lose their very first playoff game of a season after ending the regular season on a 12-game or more winning streak. The 1934 Bears are the only other team in NFL history to do that. That just goes to show how rare the Ravens season was and how even rarer an early exit in the playoffs is. I truly think the Ravens are a better team than the Titans, and I think if you line these two teams up 9 times out of 10, the Ravens win the game. But we just got the one time the Titans win it. As for the Titans, there's no specific reason why you should be here in the AFC Championship game. Of course, people are going to say, Hayden, what do you mean? They beat the Patriots and the Ravens on the road. Of course they should be here. I'm not arguing that. What I am arguing is this. So much of what the NFL is week to week comes down to chaos and luck. And we sit here, including me, every single week and try to rationalize that chaos and luck and try to make it make sense so that we can understand it, so we can quantify it, so we can rationalize it. I know I already said rationalize, but roll with me. Yet here stands this 9-7 Titans team that defies all logic. As they slayed the dynasty Patriots, as they dethrone the guy who's going to win the MVP award, getting right up in your face, staring you directly in your eyes, telling you, you better understand what we are. And what they are is an AFC team that's in the championship game. It makes no sense. It's truly just incredible to watch this run that they've been on. No team in the playoffs right now is hotter or more talked about than the Tennessee Titans, because they shouldn't be here. If you asked anybody and their great-grandmother, who are the two teams that are going to be in the AFC Championship game, literally the Texans and Titans would have gotten the least amount of votes. I promise you that. I think the Buffalo Bills would have gotten more votes by people. That's how stunning this is. You don't see this. They're in their first AFC Championship game since, 2002? It's amazing. And as chief member of the Titans bandwagon for the last 2 months, in case you couldn't tell by my Twitter Saturday night, I was very much enjoying what we were watching in that game. This is your last chance to board the hype train now, people. I've been telling you for months they're good. Now they're in the AFC Championship game with a really great shot at going to the Super Bowl. They got a really great shot. You can either board the hype train now or forever be left behind. This team just feels like they're destined for something great, aren't they? They're our Cinderella. They're our 2017 Jags team all over again. Everybody loves an underdog, so why not join the Titans bandwagon? It is your last shot to get on, people. All aboard. So once again, Titans win a stunning, historic upset 28-12. And that's it for our recap show. So, quick side note before we get into the championship slate. I know we just finished recaps. I mentioned the 1934 Bears earlier when I talked about the Ravens and the whole historic collapse and the yada, yada, yada. I just wanted to let you all know I'm writing again. I know I mentioned on the first show that I used to write for the student-run newspaper at my college. I'm writing again in my spare time. Not a whole lot, but some. And I just published my first piece Sunday afternoon. It explores the topic of what the 1934 Bears were and what they went through. All this, that, and therefore, and how they compared to the Ravens of today. It's surprisingly very close and resemble them quite a bit. And how their season went much similarly the way the Ravens just did. If you're a football nerd like me, you should go read it. I have a link down in the description box below to go check it out on a website called Medium. So go check that out. I'll be writing more, so I'll be sure to keep you a lot posted on anything, and I'll post links and all that on my social media feeds. So, yeah, it's nice to be writing again. It was a fun little piece that researched it and wrote it right before the Titans game. Not Titans, Chiefs game on Sunday. So, just wanted to mention that real quick. If you're a football nerd like me, please go check it out. It would mean a lot. Moving on. Last bit of business to take care of. Championship slate. We only got 2 games next weekend. The NFC Championship game and the AFC Championship game, both on Sundays. Both on Sunday, not Sundays. Sunday. Let's start with the AFC Championship game because it's on in the late afternoon around 3 o'clock. You got the number 6 seeded Tennessee Titans going to Kansas City to take on the 2 seeded Chiefs. And I'm going to be brutally honest with you people. To me, it does not matter who wins that game. Whoever comes out of the AFC, I am pulling for that team in the Super Bowl. Either this 9-7 Titans team that shouldn't be here wins it, or Andy Reid gets a shot at winning his Super Bowl ring that's been long overdue. So, whoever comes out of the AFC, just want to let you know I'm pulling for you. On the NFC side, you got the 2-seeded Green Bay team going to San Francisco to take on the 1-seeded 49ers in a rematch of that one-sided Sunday Night Football game from earlier this year. And also, the Titans-Chiefs game is a rematch from earlier in the year, as the Titans were the last team to beat the Chiefs in the regular season. So that's interesting. That's interesting to note. So we'll preview both of those games, and since they're both rematches, we'll at least talk about their games earlier in the season and how they could affect the games this Sunday. So next time we talk will be Friday, where we'll preview these 2 games, we'll do some fun stuff, and we'll talk about any news that's happened. So that's it for the recap show. Thanks for stopping by and giving a listen, and make sure to go, if you're at least interested, go read my piece about the 34 Chicago Bears. Just keep hyping it up. It's called a cheap plug. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll talk to you all Friday. Bye.